Our mission today is to synthesize an acoustic piano using physical modeling in Surge XT. This is kind of a white whale for me. I have failed to synthesize an acoustic piano using Nord lead, Access Virus, Matrix 6, DX7, Serum, Surge, and probably a number of others that I'm forgetting. And mostly I think that's because those are all the wrong tools for the job. It's very difficult to achieve the right sound with subtractive synthesis. Theoretically, it's possible to do it with FM, but I couldn't find any good examples, and I lack the skill to do it myself. So that's why I'm excited to be giving this a try with physical modeling. You might hear my cat from time to time. She's very needy this time of year. So what am I talking about when I say I want to do an acoustic piano? What are my requirements? Because I do have them. So first of all, it has to sound like an acoustic piano, and not a guitar, a harpsichord, an electric piano, a synthesizer, a music box, a pizzicato string, a harp, an organ, or a DX7. These are all sounds that can pop up when you are trying and failing to synthesize a piano. Note, acoustic piano, not electric piano. Electric pianos are relatively extremely easy. Number two, it needs to sound like a piano across the entire keyboard. So it's a common problem to get something that sounds almost kind of, if you squint, a little bit like a piano for like 1 or 2 octaves. But you move down an octave, and it's going to sound very much like a synthesizer again. This happens all the time. Speak louder, Savannah. She's going to try to get on my lap and or eat some of my cables. Hey, knock it off. Continuing on, number 3, it has to sound like a piano, including on the low end. It has a certain growl to the low end of the piano, which won't be there on every piano necessarily, but we want to be able to do it and not only synthesize pianos that are very clean on the low end. And there's a certain amount of inharmonicity in this sound on some pianos. And this is going to be the most difficult part. And we'll talk about that more later. But we want it to sound like a piano, even on these really deep bass notes. The next requirement is I want this model that we're making to be robust, no sweet spots. It's another common failing that if you do get the whole keyboard to sound like a piano, kind of, if you squint, and then you bump your pulse width or your filter cut off just a hair, you've ruined the entire thing and it sounds like a synthesizer again. And we want to avoid that. We want something that we can tweak and play with and generate a variety of different sounds that will all sound like a piano, but like many different pianos. So we want a robust and reliable method here. And the next requirement, this is actually the final requirement, is it has to be good enough that I would consider using it in place of a sampled piano. Because the thing is, sampled pianos are really good. A really well sampled piano will be indistinguishable from a recording of the real thing because that's what it is. And there are reasons to use a synthesized piano rather than a sampled one, largely having to do with disk space. If you want that big variety of pianos and you're relying on samples, you're going to need an external drive or something. Whereas these synthesized pianos are very lightweight. And the last one on this list, this is not a requirement, this is the reward. This is the equivalent of a cash value reward for completing this mission, which is that we will not have to buy Piano Tech. Piano Tech is a specialized physical modeling synth designed specifically to create pianos, and it's really, really good. But times are tough, and we can't all afford the really, really good things. So I want to see what we can accomplish with Surge XT, which of course is free. So this is likely to be a long and complicated and detailed video. I will, however, try to give an overview of the basic principles pretty quickly for those of us with short attention spans. Now, if you're familiar with this channel and you're expecting some MPE content, there will be some. I'm going to stick that at the end because a piano is not really an MPE instrument, and I want the bulk of this video to be useful to a general audience, but I will throw in an MPE trick or two at the end. So let's open up Surge and go up and initialize our patch. Set our polyphony to 64, because that's as high as it'll go. Filter configuration, let's set that to S2. That will just avoid some stereo field weirdness later on. Let's jump down to our modifiers really quick. Go to the key track and use that to modify the panning just a hair. It's like 11%-ish. That'll give us a stereo field for the high notes on the right and the low notes on the left. If you go too far, it'll make it sound too separated and like there's no soundboard and bridge connecting them in between, which there would be. And now for our method, we are going to be using physical modeling, which means we need an exciter and a resonator and then a couple of filters. So for our exciter, we'll go to our oscillator, set that to twist, filtered noise. Filtered noise is kind of the secret weapon of Surge XT. In my opinion, it's very useful for a lot of different things. And it's going to help us give our piano the exact hammer strike that we want to hear. So the oscillator is our hammer. The first filter is going to be our string. And that will be Effect, Comb Plus. And then we're going to need a low pass filter to help shape this thing. And any of these low pass filters will work. And later on, when we get into making variations, we will try different ones and see how it dramatically affects the character of our piano. So you can use whichever one you like. I'm going to start with the OB 12 decibel because I am an Oberheim fanboy. And then one classic struggle with trying to make a piano is getting enough brightness without buzz, because the buzz will make it sound like a harpsichord or a synthesizer, and that's not what we want. So we're going to use a second filter to kind of catch any of those high frequencies that peek through. And since we already used both of our filters, we're going to go to our effects section to set up our second filter. Now this one is going to be a scene filter, which means we're not going to be able to modulate it using Keytracking or velocity or the filter envelope or anything like that. So this one's going to be just a static wall that chops off our highest frequencies. And so I'm going to go down to the Air windows and choose Filter Z Low Pass. And this is a pretty neat filter because it gives us a fractional number of poles, which will let us be very precise about adjusting the slope that we want on that high-end filter. This will help us surgically sculpt this tone. And we come down here, we're going to have these different things modulating this. And those are primarily going to be curves built with the LFOs that will be driven by velocity and key tracking. So let's set up a couple of those really quick. First one, LFO1, I'm going to rename this Vel curve. This is going to help us get the velocity action that we want. Going to disable the rate, go to the phase and add modulation from velocity at 99%. Go over here and we're going to select this MSEG curve and edit it. And right click here and create minimal MSEG and reverse its direction. Now this is something that we're going to shape as we go because we'll figure out exactly how we want it to play. This is very important. This is a important part of all the MPE sound design, is to get a good response curve so that you can reach the volumes that you want without having to push too hard and hurt your fingers over time. I happen to know that I like an S-curve shape, so I'm going to start off by just doing a rough one of those, which we can adjust later on as needed. And we're going to turn off the loop mode and go down here and make sure this is set to be unipolar and close that up. Now I'm going to copy this curve and paste it to LFO2. I'm going to rename this Key curve. This will be driven by the key tracking. For this one, I'm going to set the phase to 50%. Because key tracking is a bipolar modulator. And go back to the phase here, right click, and add modulation from key track. Now, if there's one thing I want you to remember from this video, when you modulate an MSEG curve using key track, and you want it to modulate the entire length of the keyboard, you do not want to use 100% here. You want to use 8.33%, which is 1 divided by 12. And for some reason, that divided by 12 doesn't seem to occur in this context. And that can be really confusing and drive you mad, because what will happen is your keyboard tracking will kind of loop, and if you're modulating the filter, say, you'll come up to a middle key and for no reason your filter cutoff will drop to 0 and you won't understand why. It's because that number needs to be divided by 12. I don't know if that's on purpose or if it's a bug, but 8.33%. And this curve is going to look different. I tend to find something like this works. But again, we'll adjust this as we go. But now we've got our two modulators that we need. So let's see how great our piano sounds right now. Not very great. Okay, so let's go back and go into some detail on our exciter and our comb filter. So let's set up the filtered noise. We're going to start by deactivating key tracking. And I found that a low octave works best for this. I'm going to go with -2. Usually -2 or -1 is the best. If we go to +1, it'll start to be giving us too high a frequency and it won't work very well. And our type, there's a good amount of discretion involved in type. This is a parameter that you'll be able to use a lot of different values for and it'll still sound good. Generally, a lower value is going to sound kind of more relaxed, and a higher value is going to sound more intense, but it's going to be a very subtle effect. I'm going to leave this around here for right now. Next, we'll go to the clock frequency, and we just want this one all the way up. Too low a clock frequency is going to make it's going to have some buzziness that we won't like, and it will make our notes play kind of unevenly. The resonance all the way down. We want a non-resonating, non-tonal sound for our hammer because we want to let the string handle that stuff. The dual peak mix is a little hard to describe. Again, this is one where we have some choice, and it will affect the final character of our sound without preventing it from being a piano. I think that a higher dual peak mix will give us kind of a fuller yet duller sound, whereas the lower frequency will be a little bit brighter and a little bit weaker. So I'm going to start with this pretty high. Then we have to enable our low-pass gate. So right-click and enable. The low-pass gate is a kind of combination amplifier and filter, very popular in modular synthesis. It'll give you a plucky sound with a nice natural response to the decay. And we want to set up the decay here pretty high. And the response, I'm going to put about in the middle. The response is a good thing to modulate with velocity. Higher response is going to be a little bit brighter, so when you strike the key a little bit harder, you can get a little bit brighter response. Okay, now let's see what this sounds like. Let's just get a listen for what each of these parameters is going to do to our exciter. See how this one's very uneven. We don't want this. We want that high. This one's hard to hear when it's just the noise, but you can tell the effect when we add the comb filter. And the response. See, a too low decay is just going to make the sound go away. We might not want it at 100%. Let's keep it around here for now. You would be justified in noting that this still does not sound like a piano. So let us try our comb filter. Turn up the resonance all the way. That will make it resonate as we want. Set this key track here to be C5, and that matches the cutoff frequency of C5. That is the default here. And turn up key tracking all the way for filter 1. already starting to hear vaguely a piano up here. I'm clipping a little bit, so I'm going to turn the gain down just a hair. The filter is okay where it is for the moment, so I'm going to take a moment to set up our envelopes. And turn up the decay on both envelopes all the way. You do want a pretty high decay for a piano, but these are a thing we can adjust to change it later if we want a pluckier piano, I guess. Turn the sustain all the way down. Turn the release on the filter all the way up, and the release on the amp about midway. We want it to be big enough so we get like a whole hammer strike. If it's too short, we get these little blippy things that aren't very piano-like. That's better. And let's add some velocity control to all of this. So go over, click on not my velocity, but my vel curve. And I'm going to crank up the envelope action on filter 2 just a little bit. And then I'm going to handle the overall volume. So I'm going to take the gain over here and turn this down pretty far, -40. And then I'll use the velocity curve to bring this gain back up to around 0. Let's set both of these envelopes to the analog type. Now we already at this point have a better piano than I was ever able to make on the Nordlead Virus DX7, etc. So that's a pretty good start. It is right now a very dull piano, so let's give it some attention to our filters. I'm going to start by just turning the cutoff all the way up on this one over here, so it just won't do anything for right now. Let's go see what happens on our high notes. I know we're not getting a lot of tone there, but we are getting a lot of our exciter kind of bleeding through and giving us this stompy noise. Now this isn't entirely unrealistic if you have some experience playing a very old and not well taken care of upright piano. The hammer at that point has a lot more strength to it than the strings do. But there are a couple things we can do about this. We can raise our filter cutoff, and we can also add some attack to our amp envelope. And we're going to control both of these with our key curve. So I'm going to bring the key curve up to here for the high notes. So if we look at our key curve again, you're going to see it's going to, so up here it's going to increase our attack time and soften that transient that's giving us the big thud. And it's going to do that less so as we go down. Pretty much to the ear, 0 to like maybe 30 milliseconds. It's still going to be a pretty instantaneous beginning to our sound. It'll just feel a little softer. So if we modulate it up all the way to 300 milliseconds, it's going to make that a little less annoying. And so now let's also turn up our filter cutoff, still modifying it by the, still modulated by the key curve. Down here in the middle range a little bit, we're hearing some the beginnings of a buzz that we don't want, that's going to sound like a harpsichord or a synthesizer or a guitar. So I'm going to go adjust the key curve a bit. I didn't get rid of quite as much buzz as I wanted to, but if I go too far, it's gonna get rid of our top notes. So that's what our second filter is for. So let's bring that cutoff down. This note here, this F, is still feeling a little buzzy to me. Feeling like I have a bit too much decay. So I'm going to hesitantly turn down my decays a bit. Hesitantly because I've already made this sound numerous times and having the decay all the way up was pretty good. But for now, let's just turn these down a little bit. And we want to keep going back and forth as we adjust things to get the full range of the keyboard. It's feeling like too much buzz on the low end. We want a little bit. We want a little, I would call it growl on the low end. But this is maybe a bit too much. So let's modify our curve a bit. It can be hard to tell here. Even though I gave you the 8.33% trick, it still can be really difficult to properly use the key tracking. That's just the way it goes. This doesn't seem to map linearly to the keyboard, and it can be confusing. So that's as far down as the key track can go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the cutoff down. And now we need to compensate for that by increasing the amount that the key curve is going to modulate the cutoff. And maybe let's give it a little modulation to the filter. I meant to say a little modulation to the filter envelope. And at this point, we've been playing around with this for a little bit. If you're not feeling really comfortable playing it, we can probably start like looking at the velocity curve and seeing if we need to make it so we don't have to press as hard, or so we have to press a little harder. So the middle of the curve is basically how dynamic it's going to be. Turn it down, it's going to be very dynamic. Turn it up, it's going to be more even. Now I can still hammer on this and get a sound that clips. And if you need it more dynamic still, we can turn down this gain and increase the modulation some more. I can give myself some more envelope from the velocity. We're only using 2 modulators right now. As I said before, things can get very complex. We might want to have, for example, 2 different key curves controlling 2 different parameters. What we want to do, though, is make sure of a couple things. This is going to get complex enough all on its own, so we don't want to add complexity by poor design decisions. So let's try not to, first of all, not to have 2 different modulators fighting each other on a particular control. That can get very confusing. So we don't want to use this key track here to turn down our filter key tracking at the same time as we're using the key curve to turn up our filter tracking. So make sure you avoid things like that. And also make sure you don't use both velocity and the velocity curve to modulate a single parameter. You only want to use one of them. Really, the only thing we should be modulating with velocity is the velocity curve. And this is feeling a little too dynamic to me, more dynamic than the pianos I'm used to playing. So I'm just going to make sure that I have this level good and high. It also really helps if you have a piano-weighted keyboard with 88 keys. Unfortunately, I don't, so I'm using my virus here. And I have to press a button when I want to change octaves, and I have to deal with this synth action on the keys, which is annoying for a piano sound. And I think it actually makes me less creative when noodling around because my fingers aren't getting the right spring from everything that I play, so they don't jump around the way I want them to. And I've also been mostly playing the instrument the last few years and not touching keyboards very much, so I've kind of forgotten a lot of what I used to do on the keyboard. And I was never great at it to begin with, so I apologize for any subpar noodling you may hear. But I'm just trying to get the sounds right. I should mention by now we have totally blown away my experience with subtractive synthesis and, albeit more limited, experience with FM synthesis. This is also much better than anything I've been able to get in the way of an acoustic piano on a wavetable synthesis, even when I use a wavetable that is actually sampled from a piano. So I'm pretty happy with this, actually. Low notes still a little buzzy for me. But not entirely out of the realm of feasibility for an acoustic piano. So now's a good time to stop and play around if your attention span has had enough. And I will next get on to getting very detailed. I'm going to start by adding a couple effects, mostly a reverb. And then I'm going to look at that low note growl and inharmonicity, which is going to be the most difficult thing. I wasn't telling you to leave the video. You should definitely stay. Just, take a coffee break if your mind is wandering. So let's just, let's save our sound. I'm going to call this Tutorial Piano B, because I already made this tutorial and had to redo it because I made a dumb mistake. Put it in category keys. And name yourself as the author. And I'm going to throw some reverb on here. I'm going to go over here to the voice reverbs. Sorry, the voice effects. And I'll actually go to slot 2 in case I decide to throw something in slot 1. Go to reverb 2, and I'm going to pick the piano hall. And crank down this mix till like 25%. See how our high notes are sounding right now. So we're still hearing that hammer action, but it's not as bad anymore. And I'm going to try one more thing. I'm going to just see how this is sounding with the sustain pedal. The sustain pedal is a little weird. Sometimes it doesn't seem to work. And I don't know, that might be something with my setup. So sometimes I actually have to go in here and set the sustain as a modulator and drag up the release envelope for my amp. But since it's working, I'm going to leave it alone. All right, so let's take a look at this low end. And again, what we want is growl and inharmonicity. Now, in my experience, it's almost a buzz, but it's too low to be a buzz, and it's a growl. So that's that almost rhythmic sound there is appropriate for a piano. And that's a thing that's hard to achieve with the other synthesis methods. It does, however, it is a little... I want to put an envelope on this. I want there to be more buzz at the beginning and then it to get softer pretty quick. So let's look at my envelope here for filter 2. And it's already being modulated both by velocity and by the key curve. So I don't want to use that envelope because I'll be fighting with myself. So I'm going to make a new envelope. I'll go down here to LFO 3. And set that to envelope mode. Turn the sustain all the way down. And give it more of a analog shape with the deform slider. And I'm going to use this to modulate the cutoff. Put it up here. Shorten the decay. I'm going to turn down the overall cutoff. Now I only want this envelope to affect the low end, so I'm going to go down here to the amplitude, leave this all the way up. I'm going to modulate this with my key curve. Minus 99. So that's not going to affect the high notes. Let's make sure that's working. Let's just turn up the decay. So yeah, it's definitely doing what I want. Now, if we lost too much high end there, oh, I did lose my reverb. I had to reload the sound because there was a snafu when I took a break in the recording. So go back to the piano hall. No, it was at like 25%. Maybe I want this to modulate a little bit more. Just make sure I didn't mess up the high end. Maybe this range is a little brighter than I want it to be right now. Can I fix that with the key curve? Pull this up a bit. I'm going to go to my second filter and pull this cutoff down. There's this like constant struggle of balancing the different filters and things. Okay, I've got too much of this envelope. So just pull this back down. Okay, so we've got the growl, but there's also the issue of inharmonicity. So it happens on a real piano, particularly a smaller piano, where the strings on the low notes cannot be as long as they need to be to get that fundamental frequency You can get a lower frequency either by having a longer string or by having a thicker string. And so the small pianos tend to have thicker strings because they can't have that length. And what happens with a thicker string is it's going to have some stiffness to it, which is going to throw the harmonics out of whack. And I can't explain this, the physics of this, but a thicker string is stiffer. It will push the harmonics sharper. And that happens on the low end, particularly of small pianos, but also probably to some degree on your big grand pianos. And so what this does, because the harmonics are out of tune, it gives this kind of metallic, clanky sound, kind of a bell-like sound. And it also causes you to need to tune the piano a little differently. So what you need to do for those notes, well, you need to do across the piano really, because all the strings have some stiffness. But this is mostly an issue in the low end. You need to tune the notes, the fundamental, down so that the harmonics will come into tune with the higher octaves. Now the way I would like to do this, and probably the way that Piano Tech does this, I'd like to have a slider here in my comb filter that would sort of tilt the comb filter. So the way a comb filter works is it's a very short delay with the delay time tuned to the wavelength of the desired pitch. And what this stiffness parameter would give us, what it would do is it would make the low frequency delay relatively longer compared to the high frequency delay. So that would push our higher frequencies sharp and accomplish the effect that we want. Unfortunately, we do not have this slider. So we can just live with our low end sounding like this. Or we're going to have to fake it. But before I do that, I want to look at another thing. Another way of doing it, because we do actually have a way in Surge of accomplishing this stiffness. I've saved my patch, so I'm going to load up string os piano. There we go. We have the string oscillator, and this is doing exactly the kind of comb filter thing we want. We have a stiffness parameter here. Which is pushing those harmonics out of tune. Now, you might have noticed that this doesn't sound a lot like a piano. It's reminding me of probably a electric piano from a Led Zeppelin song. It's not a bad sound. And we can actually do better than this because I've done a lot of work on this. I have made better piano sounds using this technique. And this does sound better on its own in the low end. I've already done the trick here. That's why. But the reason I'm not using this method is I found that I can't get enough variety of pianos out of this. It's hard to get even one thing that really sounds like a piano. But our exciter noise is very limited. Our choices are basically this burst noise or the burst pink noise. And the burst noise is worse. Again, that could be really cool, but it's not a piano. And the pink noise is closer, but not close enough. So what I've done here, I have a curve. This is being driven by a key track. This one is not unipolar, so this middle area here is no effect, and the high end is going to push the stiffness negative, and the low end is going to push the stiffness positive. So if I go really low, you will hear the inharmonicity that we're looking for. Crank that up a bit so we can hear more clearly. And what I have to do there also is I'm going to use the same curve. Let me shrink this window a bit so we can see. I need a tuner. So I'm going to play a C down here. And we've been pushed out of tune by the stiffness. So I'm going to use the same curve to modulate our pitch. So that's what we would like to do, but we can't do it in our comb filter. So I'm going to go back and load my tutorial patch. So how can we fake this effect? There are a few different options. I'm going to use an FM oscillator. So let's go to oscillator 2 and set it to be FM 3. Now this is important. Here we have the mixer telling it which filter each of these is going to go to. And we do not want the FM to pass through the comb filter, because that will drive us crazy. So I'm going to click this over. So this is here, this is only going to go through the low pass. And I'm going to mute the filtered noise for the moment so we can only hear the FM, and unmute the FM. That's just a sine wave. Let's set the M1 ratio to 5, exactly 5, and turn up the amount a bit. And we want our metallic effect to fade out between these two C's. So we're going to give ourselves another key curve. Let's go down to LFO4, rename this clank curve. This is also going to be an MSEG. Disable the rate. Set the phase to 50 and modulate it with the key track by, does everyone remember the magic number? 8.33%. And set it to unipolar. Open this up turn off the loop mode, create minimal MSEG. I'm going to give a square curve for the moment because I want to zero in on exactly where the sound is. Exactly where the notes are that we want to disappear. So I'm going to go back over to the mixer. I'm going to turn down this volume all the way for oscillator 2 and use the clank curve to bring this volume all the way up. And a quick note here, when I set up the velocity control for the volume, I use this gain slider over here to do that. And the reason is, if I hadn't done that and I had just used the velocity to control these volumes, things would have gotten complicated and annoying. Because I'm also modulating these with other things and it gets weird. So I'm just going to play up until I run out of notes. Oh hey, I got it pretty much right. That is the last C that we want to have clanky. And we don't hear the higher notes than that. And we want this effect to start about a C lower. So now it's full volume at this C and fades out by the time we get to the higher C. Now I don't want this sharp point here, so I'm going to delete that point, and give us a curve like this. So now we're getting most effect down here. And I can actually go an octave lower. But I don't think the actual real piano goes down this far. So we're going to take our clank curve and modulate the M1 amount. And also the M1 ratio, because this is going to be the strings getting stiffer as we go further down. So I'm going to pull this up. Now I'm not going to do the pitch trick here. I'm not going to track the pitch with the clank curve the way we did with the other oscillator, because our original oscillator is going to be still in here, and that would also be picked up by the pitch. So let's bring back our original filtered noise. I've exaggerated a little bit. Let's go back to our clank curve. Let's turn down the filtered noise a little bit. And let's also turn down the amount of modulation to the FM. And play with these till it sounds like a piano again. So we do have this bell-like metallic sound at the very low end. And I'm feeling a little bit dull, so I'm going to bring this cutoff up a bit. So we do have the effect that I want there, but it is not exactly the stiffness that I would like. It's not scientifically, theoretically accurate. And it serves to muddy up the sound somewhat. Which is not unrealistic, especially again for an upright piano or any other of the smaller pianos. So it's up to you whether you want to include this kind of trick in your final sound. I have included it in some and not in others. I would really like that stiffness slider, but I do not have it. But this is kind of feeling very familiar to me from my beloved ancient piano, where the lowest keys are just this blur of frequencies. Kind of a bell-like effect. I am finding these low notes pretty quiet, so I'm going to go here to my key curve. I'm going to use it to turn down the gain by like 4 decibels. And that's going to even things out. I will then go to the output gain and put this up by like 4 decibels to make up for that. I really wish I could play those octaves without having to press the octave button. Buy me a coffee 800 times so that I can buy a 88 key weighted keyboard. Or an Osmos. I would love the Osmos, but I probably need the 88 key more than that. Okay, our piano is right now in a very good shape. So I'm going to save it again. Oh, also, while I'm on the subject of the FM, the amount and the ratio are negotiable. This sound just worked for me, but there are a lot of different tones you can get out of the FM3 oscillator. And you might bring in the M2 as well if you want. That's something you can play around with. Okay, I'm going to show you one more trick. I'm going to show you one more dumb little trick, but I like it. And then we'll get into variations. So I'm going to go to scene B, which I have never used before in one of these tutorials. And I'm going to go to oscillator 1 and set it to be filtered noise. Twist, filtered noise. I'm going to leave the LPG off this time. Turn up the clock frequency, put the type around here, turn off the resonance, and put a low pass filter on it, and turn up the cutoff, not too high. Turn the oscillator volume down to about here. Turn the release up on the amp envelope. Give ourselves a second envelope. Leave it alone, except turn the release all the way down. And use this envelope to modulate oscillator 1. Drag this volume all the way down. Turn off the key track. Turn this down to -2. I'm going to press a key, and then I'm going to release it. Turn up the volume to make sure you can hear it. And then turn that volume way back down. That's going to be the sound of our hammers falling back into place when we release a key. So I'll go back to scene A and go to dual mode. And go back to scene B and turn this volume down some more. You want it low enough that you really mostly don't notice this. That's assuming you decide to use this effect at all. It just kind of emphasizes the mechanical nature of the piano, which I think is pretty cool. I get musical effects out of this too sometimes, which is kind of neat. But it can also be annoying. So this is definitely an optional thing. Okay, let's look at how we're doing. Sounds like a piano? Check. Across the entire keyboard? Check. Low End Growl and Inharmonicity? Not as good as I would like, but check, sort of. Now let's see, can we make many distinct pianos? I salute you if you've made it this far into the video, although I will have edited it down so that you will not have suffered as long as I have. Okay, let's look at some things we can do to vary this sound. First, I'll talk about the subtle things, and those are going to be in the filtered noise. We can change the type. We can also modulate that with velocity or with the key curve. We'll leave frequency alone. Dual peak mix. That one's going to be pretty subtle. It'll depend on our filter settings though. And again, we can just either move it to a different value or modulate it. And the response. Decay. Got a much smaller range with the decay. As it gets too small, we're going to just mostly lose our sound. Comb filter, there's not a lot we can do with it, but we do have this little button here. We can switch between 50% and 100% wet. So at 50%, so the 100% is kind of a little bit fuller, I think, and louder, definitely is a little bit louder. whereas the 50% is maybe better for an intimate piano. Maybe you're upright in your Gothic study and not on the concert stage where you would definitely want 2 for that. And we can also modify our curves to change how it plays and how the filter and whatnot act across the keyboard. So that's always an option. And the biggest effect on our sound is going to be these filters. Let's try a 24 decibel filter. A steeper curve here is going to allow us to push our cutoff up. And remember, we've got a lot of key curve modulating this. And the velocity, because we're modulating the envelope too. Paradoxically, the steeper curve can allow you to get a brighter sound without reaching into that buzzy territory that we don't want to do. Maybe a little buzzier than I'd want here. And all of these filters here, each one's going to give you a different effect, a different character to your piano. Just lots of different pianos. Let's make this a darker piano and give it some more dramatic reverb. And that is a very different piano than the one we had a moment ago. Make this a little bit brighter. Let's try the the K35, which I believe is a Korg emulation. And these all have kind of different characteristics, so you can't just switch from one filter to the other without making any adjustments. Right here I'm getting more buzziness than I want. But But instead of adjusting the cutoff, I'm going to look at our second filter, because there's a lot we can do with this one too. So that's the Air Windows low pass. If I crank up the poles, that's going to give this a steeper cutoff. And again, we have a very different piano than we did a moment ago. Now, our basic theory to this model is the first filter is going to be kind of the dynamic workhorse that's controlled by all the modulators and stuff. And the second filter is going to cut off anything that slips through that's too high in terms of frequencies. But we can actually play with that a bit. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Like if we turn our cutoff down, but we also turn our poles down, this cutoff now is actually a lot lower than this one is, because remember this one's being modulated by the curve and by the envelope. Bring this one brighter. And it's not going to make a lot of difference because this one's too low. Change the type here. Bring the type back down. I'm going to modulate that with the velocity curve. Actually, no. I'm going to modulate that with the filter curve, or is this the filter EG? And anytime you get a sound you particularly like, you should go and make sure to listen to all the extreme notes. decide if you want to make any adjustments to your curves. Mainly will be what you're using to bring those things back into sync so that everything's playing nice and evenly and pleasantly across the keyboard. Okay, I'm going to go back and reload. I am satisfied now. We can get a lot of variation out of this. So just a couple more tricks. If we are not super attached to our hammer drop effect, which is gone now because I accidentally reloaded the patch in the wrong place without saving. But if we're not doing that, we can use scene B for something else. We can detune the piano. Now, in a normal synth setup, we could just have two oscillators and detune them against each other, but in this setup, the comb filter is really our pitch carrier, if that makes sense. And we've only got the one comb filter. So we're going to use a second scene to give ourselves a second string that we can detune. So I'm just going to copy scene A. And make sure you have a sound you like before you do this, because you don't want to have to make adjustments to two different scenes every time you find something you don't like. So I'm going to paste the scene into scene B, set us to dual again. That didn't seem to work. Copy scene A, paste scene into B. Okay, you actually have to be on scene B to paste into it. And so now that I'm here, I can just turn up this pitch. And so now you have a honky-tonk piano if for some reason you wanted one. But I'm going to undo that. What I like is old pianos, broken pianos, poorly cared for pianos, where some strings are in tune and some kind of aren't. So I'm going to go down here to LFO 5. I'm going to set this to the sequencer mode. I'm going to make some little offsets. And one big offset. I'm going to disable this rate. Set the phase to 50%. And modulate the phase with our key track. And we're going to use the key track and not the key curve. 8.33% again. And that should be good. And we're going to use this to modulate our pitch. How bad do we want it to be? Let's start with just 0.29 semitones. Okay. Let's make it a little worse so that we can tell it's working. We do risk it sounding like a synth again if we do too much on this pitch. I think I'm also having a problem because my cutoff is just too high. And we can use this same sequencer or make another one because we do have one slot left, but I'll just use the same one for now. And let's just modulate some of these subtle effects on the filtered noise. Just to give it a little more jankiness. Let's pretend that we brought someone in to try to bring this a little bit into tune. And we did that only like 17 months ago. Let's modulate this pitch a little bit too. Because our hammers are all in disrepair, in various stages of disrepair. So that's another thing you can do. You do sacrifice the hammer drop with this, because you could bring that back with a filtered noise in one of your other slots here. But what's going to happen is we can't bypass both filters. So it's going to be affected by the cutoff of the low pass filter, and it's just not going to poke through on the low notes. It'll be too quiet. And all the hammers will sound different, which they shouldn't. They should sound pretty much the same, even if they are slightly varied. They shouldn't have a smooth curve from the low end to the high end. But honestly, like, losing that key click is not a huge sacrifice. It is a little bit for a broken piano, though. So maybe I would just use a second instance of surge along with this one. To bring those clicks back. And that should do it. Let's see how we're doing on our requirements. Sounds like a piano, yes. Across the entire keyboard, yes. Low end growl and inharmonicity, Robust, no sweet spots, can make many distinct pianos. I think so. Would consider using it in place of a sampled piano. Yes, I would. It depends on the context. But if I'm making a new lo-fi album, which I might do, I will probably do that. That would be cool. That was a fun album. Here's a shameless plug. This is my album. It was good. You should buy it. And while I'm shamelessly plugging things, if you'd like to study from this piano that we worked on, I do have it. I'm going to have one of these pianos that we've made, and also one with the string oscillator. They will be on in the free tools section on my website, so the link is in the description, and you can grab those for free. I'm also, because I made a ton of pianos while researching this video, I'm going to make available a pack for sale also on my website. It'll be something like 18 pianos for $6 maybe. That link will also be in the description. You don't need that since I just taught you how to make them, but if you're lazy or you like my sounds or you just want to support the channel, it would be much appreciated. If I'm using it in a mix with something else with other instruments, I would have no problem considering it at least in place of a sampled piano. If I was doing a solo piano album, and for some reason I was doing that without using a real piano, then I would probably not use this or a sampled piano. I would use Pianotech. And that's mostly because of that those low-end harmonics not being quite right. So finally, do I get the cash prize? Do I not have to buy Pianotech? Well, because I'm me and the piano is not the most important sound that I use, I think for now I do not need to buy Pianotech. But I kind of want to. Okay, let's take a quick moment for some MPE. Multiphonic, multidimensional polyphonic expression, or MIDI poly expression, whatever. I need to make sure my MPE is enabled here. I disabled it for some reason, I don't remember what. So yeah, that's the first MPE trick. Of course, we can pitch bend without even having done anything. Now I would like to add some sustain to this so that it can just keep going. And I want to control that with pressure. So we're not using oscillator 3 yet. Going to unmute oscillator 3. It's going to go through the comb filter. It's going to be another filtered noise. Actually, can I copy oscillator 1? Yes. I'm going to paste that into oscillator 3. And I'm going to disable the LPG because I want a sustained sound out of this. And while I'm here, I'm going to turn the type down, and I'm going to use MPE timbre. To turn the type up. It's a bipolar control, so put that in the middle and bring this all the way. Turn down this volume all the way. And use pressure to bring it up. Maybe to there. And let's see what that gives us. Okay, so we also want the pressure to modulate the sustain on our AmpEG. Now we don't want the second oscillator coming through while we're just playing the piano normally. So we want to introduce a delay to this. So I'm going to grab LFO 5, set that to be an envelope, and we're going to do this kind of backwards. So turn the sustain down. We've got some decay here. We're going to use this to negatively modulate the volume of oscillator 3. So let's put 3 up in the middle here. Envelope 5 brings that all the way down, and the MPE pressure is going to bring it up only to the top. So now that's only coming in when we hold the note down. And we've got more noise than I would like coming through on that. Let's try changing our octave. Turn off the key track. Maybe give this some resonance. And we don't want it to be quite as loud. So let's turn it down some more. Now I am hearing some aliasing coming through on that, which is not something you normally get in Surge XT. We could also just use a regular oscillator here. Got triangle. Click down here to make sure that it only goes through the low pass filter and not the comb. And we can bring the volume up a little more. Now, because we're using the velocity to control this gain here, this oscillator is also going to be influenced by the velocity, which is not really what we would like, but it contributes to the larger purpose of making this sound like a piano. We can turn the volume down here from the velocity to compensate somewhat. And maybe we want to crank this up an octave plus 7 semitones. So there we have a little bit of MPE that we can do with this sound.